Picture a Scottish woman traveling the world entirely on her own in the closing decades of the 19th century. Brush in hand, notebook filled with daily entries, she had already crossed India, Australia, Fiji, and Hawaii, making it a personal rule to paint at least one careful watercolor of everything she saw. This woman spent what may have been the most peaceful 2 years of her life on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, Ceylon, an island famed even then for its green hills and its ancient temples. Constance Frederica Gordon Cumming records everything she encounters there, from temples to tea gardens, from coral reefs to village markets, entirely in her own voice. The book is neither a scientific report nor an ordinary tourist diary, but something between the two, written in the voice of a patient, endlessly curious observer. So what made this island bring her such happiness? Let me tell you the story. Constance Frederica Gordon Cumming was born in 1837 at Altyre in Scotland. She was the 12th child of a wealthy Scottish landed family, one whose grandfather had inherited the Gordon name and fortune back in 1804, placing the family firmly among Scotland's long-established landed gentry. Gordon Cumming lived a life strikingly unlike that of most women of her era, spending nearly her entire adult life traveling the globe. Without a husband, children, or a fixed home to anchor her, she packed her trunk and her paints and traveled alone for years at a stretch, the very opposite of the life expected of a well-born Scottish woman of her time. She traveled to India, Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, Fiji, Tahiti, and Samoa, reached Hawaii in 1879, and spent 3 months in Yosemite Valley in 1878. Everywhere she went, she made it a rule to complete at least one carefully painted watercolor each day, and over her lifetime, she produced more than 1,000 paintings. Those works are preserved today in institutions such as the Honolulu Museum of Art, the Oakland Museum of California, and the Yosemite Museum, each one a small document trying to freeze the light, color, and mood of a single day exactly as she found it. Gordon Cumming was also a prolific author who turned her travels into books, including At Home in Fiji, Fire Fountains, and In the Himalayas and on the Indian Plains. Her book on Ceylon, published in the final decade of the 19th century, describes what may have been the calmest, happiest stop in this long traveling life. She makes no secret of that feeling even in her title, declaring her affection for the island openly from the very first pages. The book narrates the 2 years Gordon Cumming spent in Ceylon through the eye of a painter, filled with patient observations on the island's daily life, each chapter unfolding almost like a window opening onto a new view, a new face, or a new custom on display. While describing the island's landscapes, temples, and monuments, she also closely tracks its economic transformation, since the island was in the middle of shifting from coffee cultivation to tea at that very time, a change reshaping rural life from top to bottom. New railways and roads had begun connecting the island's interior to its coastal ports. As she travels through new tea fields planted where abandoned coffee gardens once stood, she also observes how this shift is reshaping laborers' daily lives, their migration routes, and the population of entire villages. And she notices how rapidly growing tea consumption back in England was quietly rearranging the daily rhythm of a village on the far side of the ocean. The island's temples and ancient monuments also receive extensive attention in the book, described not merely as sightseeing stops, but as living traces of a long religious and cultural history that had endured, patiently, into her own century. Gordon Cumming moves among the island's different communities like an endlessly curious guest, passing easily from one to the next, the Sinhalese, the Tamils, and the more Muslim community, taking a genuine interest in each, recording their religions, customs, and daily lives with curiosity and respect, giving the same careful seriousness to a religious ceremony she attends as to the haggling she observes in a market stall. The book also includes scenes of school visits, missionary work, and village life. She describes at length how children were educated in the schools she visited, the daily work of missionaries on the island, and the simple, steady rhythm of village life, observations that give the book something of the flavor of a field notebook, so vivid at times that a reader feels almost as though they were walking beside her. She is also an energetic traveler in her own right, gathering coral along the shore, wandering local markets, and riding outrigger canoes carved from tree trunks through the coastal shallows, chatting with fishermen, and noting down every shell and coral fragment she collects as though it were a small treasure. Touching also on the colonial history of Colombo, the book weaves natural history, archaeology, and everyday life closely together, moving from the bustling commerce of the harbor on one page to a quiet temple in a completely different rocky cove on the next. Gordon Cumming's narration reads less like an official colonial report than like the diary of a warm, endlessly curious observer, and the 28 illustrations she drew herself, along with a map, visually support everything she describes. These illustrations were never mere decoration. They were a direct extension of her habit of recording every scene the same day she saw it, and they carry almost as much information as the text itself. What keeps this book readable today is the curiosity and respect running through Gordon Cumming's view of Ceylon. While much travel writing of her era treated the places it visited as little more than exotic backdrop, she tries in careful detail to record the island's different communities, its economy, and its everyday life. The book is read today as a valuable record of daily life on a colonial island at the close of the 19th century, and historians and general readers alike find small details here that official records simply left out: the smell of a market, the sound of a ceremony, an ordinary day at a village school. At the same time, the book stands as a document of one woman's courage in traveling the world alone, far outside the boundaries expected of women of her era. A reader today notices both the contradictions built into the colonial world she describes and the rare attentiveness of a traveler genuinely trying to look at the land in front of her, and notices too how easily those two things sit side by side on the very same page. Gordon Cumming's own life is every bit as interesting as her books. Though she grew up as one of the youngest of 12 children, at a time when most women of her class stayed at home, she instead traveled alone to every corner of the globe. Her daily habit of completing one painting wherever she went gave her the identity not just of a traveler, but of a documentarian, a discipline that even most male travelers of her era rarely managed to sustain. Today, her watercolors are displayed in museums as an important part of the visual memory of the places she visited, and many researchers turn to these paintings for details that even period photographs failed to capture. Her Ceylon book, alongside the similar books she wrote on Fiji, Hawaii, and the Himalayas, stands as evidence of how a single woman in the 19th century managed to travel through and record nearly an entire world. Taken together, these books form something close to a continent-spanning visual and literary archive, a richness that even today's researchers might envy, all filtered through one traveler's patient eye. We have covered 2 happy years in Ceylon, but the book's real magic lies in a traveler's genuine effort to truly see and understand the land she visited. If you would like to hear the complete book as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Subscribe for more books in this series. Until the next one, remember that the 2 happy years Gordon Cumming spent on this island, illustrated in her own hand, are still waiting patiently to be read and rediscovered between the pages.